with my best friend and other co-host, Michael Hamilton. Michael, which other Michael do you want to address by Michael? Should it be Hamilton and Fang for the rest of the podcast? Or because if I just say Michael for the rest of the podcast, it's going to get pretty confusing.
I think Hamilton and Fang works. I might just say Michael, but I don't know.
Yeah, I guess you two can say Michael. I'm not allowed to say Michael though, because obviously Michael's not going to be talking about Michael in the third person if one of you two say Michael, right? So
yeah, whatever you prefer. I'm cool with anything.
Or to be first person. I've confused myself now. Anyways, how are you doing, Michael Feng?
I'm good. It's been a crazy week and a half. I have Dennis and Gordon were staying at my place. Dennis Zhang and Gordon Ko, both Flesh and Blood players. So it's as if in some ways the Pro Tour hasn't ended, because I still am interacting with guys that flew abroad to play at the Pro Tour, and we recently just booked flights for Dennis to go to Antwerp. So we're all going to go to Antwerp together. So it's never ending basically. But yeah, it's been a good time. I think, I don't know, I never expected to do as well as I did, and so now it's just this cool thing where I get to be on a podcast with you guys, and I just got to be on a podcast with Blake, and yeah, I feel like the hot middle school girl. Everyone's texting me, and so it's been a different world, right?
To be fair, you were already a little Flesh and Blood famous as the guy that went to all the battles. You and Bodee, as the guys that go to all the battle hardens anyways. And you've had a lot of success on battle hardens, and you won a calling, and you have finished second in national. So it's not like this is your first big finish in anything.
Yes, that's true, but it is the biggest finish, and it's kind of just, I don't know, when I first won the calling in Cincinnati, in my interview, everyone gets that little article. I said that I mainly did this to get opportunities to compete with integrity and also make connections, but that at the back of my head, I was really concerned that this would be a fluke. This would be the last time you ever interview me. I'm never going to make top 8 again. And a lot of this came from the fact that I played a lot of Magic. And I did this count because Flake gave me show notes, and he was like, what's your origin for trading card games? I actually went to mtgelo.com and I counted, and I went to 17 different Grand Prix in the span of 4 years, and I never top 8'd any of them.
Same, dude.
I had a 10-3 and a 10-4 record. Those were my two best finishes, but I never top 8'd. And 10-3 and 10-4, I think 10-3 was good enough for a top 16, but it wasn't good enough to get an invite to the Pro Tour. I think you needed to 10-2. And so I never made the Magic Pro Tour. I just was really a nobody in the Magic world, even though I committed so much time in it. And so I was so used to everything about not. And even before the calling Cincinnati, I had never won an Armory event. So not used to that type of success, but now it's things have changed. And I really feel a lot of it I can attribute to being able to test with the Wolfpack, obviously, which I know Michael will ask me more about later. But some of it's also just being a little bit more mature, honestly, at this stage of life. When I was first playing Magic, it was literally at this point 9 years ago, almost a decade ago. And I feel I've gotten better at just being good at things.
I wonder if you and I have ever played a match of Magic the Gathering against each other. I should go back. Is there a way to see?
And you, me, and Michael Hamilton have never played at a Grand Prix.
Okay, which is crazy because we were probably all in the same room multiple times, multiple years in a row.
I kind of stopped playing when Michael started playing more, when Hamilton started playing more, because you and I actually talked about that once in a testing game where we finished gaming and then we were just reminiscing about Magic for a couple almost an hour, I think, and we were just looking at MTG Elo. So
interesting.
Yeah. So that's my last couple of weeks have been wild. Not by wild. Just it's just I feel I'm living on a cloud. This is not the normal Eeyore lifestyle. Yeah, exactly. I love how you thought of that too.
Yeah. What's your Wolfpack based questions though, Michael? You're on the team. I'm sure you have a lot to ask Fang about.
So I just wanted to ask how your experience with the testing process was leading into the Pro Tour. I remember, I think it was Thursday before the Pro Tour. You were up in your room, not hanging out, not drafting with everybody, just kind of pondering CC stuff, playing and talking with Bodee a little bit. you want to talk about your preparation maybe that day a little bit?
So obviously I'd been in Spain for quite a bit. I wasn't really able to test. I actually, honestly, I feel like of all the Wolfpack members, I feel like I'm one of the most delinquent. I don't know if that makes sense, because I suck at waking up in the morning, and most of the guys test in the morning, at least a couple games, and I was before, I think before Worlds, I was waking up making an effort to like test in the morning, but I just felt like I wasn't getting much out of it because I was just like making misplays that like my brain just wasn't functioning at like 7. And the worst thing is I'm an hour behind or ahead of you guys, so you guys are like type playing at
No, we're both the EST.
I guess some of the
most
Midwest
of the Wolfpack Central, but
most of the Wolfpack is Central. I just felt like so bad because like it's technically an hour later and I'm still like I'm not there. I guess that Thursday though specifically, I remember I wasn't that concerned about draft, but it wasn't because I didn't like I felt super prepared. I hadn't really drafted much. I think we did like I did one draft. I brought all the product and I did one draft with everyone. I honestly for my life of me can't even remember what hero I drafted. But I remember just like I just wanted like the familiarity of like opening packs and like passing them, and like it didn't really matter to me what hero I drafted. I think I just drafted whatever I thought was open. But I felt like draft was like secondary because I was having a crisis that day. Like I had Lexi, I had Oldhim, Bodee had just Oldhim, and I was like, I wasn't at peace with what we were going to submit for CC, and I wasn't at peace with either playing Lexi or playing. I just like needed some more clarity, and so like Bodee and I actually went to his room. We kicked out his mom. His mom was like doing work on her laptop. Felt bad about that. So sorry, Brody's mom. Sorry, Shar. And we just jammed. Like I think we only played like 2 games. It was like Oldhim, Lexi, and I was playing Oldhim. He was playing Lexi, and I think I actually won both of those games. And I was like, I'm playing Oldhim, and that was enough for him to be like, I think I should just play Lex. Even though he lost both games, I think like he saw like, oh, I had like the lines to like really juice Michael, but like both of them were very close. Like it was neck and neck. But he didn't have a Lexi deck, and I was like, well, if I don't play Lexi, I have the Lexi deck. And then that night that happened. I just left all my Lexi cards with him, and I went home, and that was actually that wasn't even at nighttime out. That was like kind of early afternoon because I went straight home after that. I didn't even go to the players meeting. I missed the banquet. Whoops. And I missed I missed the group. I felt so sad. I missed the team photo with everyone else.
Oh, remember? Yeah. You weren't in that picture. I was just in our dinner picture.
I went to Leslie's parents' home. The way this happened was, I don't know why, but I felt so bad. Like I didn't really enjoy the very first players banquet, and sure. I remember for Pro Tour 2, the players banquet was like it was like really hot.
Yeah, that one was miserable.
Yeah, and I never even made it to the World's Players Banquet. Like I was waiting in line, and I was so hungry. We just like went somewhere else and got food, and so I just had like this like negative feeling about players banquets and anxiety. And I was just like, I don't really want to like be in this space right now. I just came back from Spain. I'm still under a little bit of jet lag. I'm like pretty sleepy right now. I just wanted to like go home and get rest. But then I felt sad because I missed the team photo.
It's okay. You didn't get psyops like I did by the team, so you didn't miss much.
Oh no! Like the draft psyops were like the
it's okay.
Psyops.
I just keep giving Nathan shit because Nathan and I kept getting into arguments the whole time about things. But like, it's okay. Nathan's wrong. I'm right. But I won in the end.
Wow.
That's fair. I did dodge potential psyops for my own team. So
that's the downside to team that they don't tell you about.
Yeah, that's. I don't know if that answered the question.
It did.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Michael.
I guess
Hamilton.
Leading up, like you said, you were in Spain, like you were in Spain for a while before the Pro Tour. Do you think that was why you were kind of like so on the fence about your deck choice at that point? Just like,
yeah, I think. So I was playing Oldhim and planned on playing Oldhim all the way up until the Thursday, like the week before the Pro Tour Thursday. when I was having lunch with Leslie, my wife Leslie, and I was telling her about basically my struggles, and it was like we had done the charts and Talishar meta stats and my own testing all showed that Lexi was just a force to be reckoned with, and numerically like very good at outputting a lot of damage, breaking the cost curves of Flesh and Blood consistently. And with 3 of a kind, you also didn't get as disrupted. I colloquially called it like having like 3 husks that but you have to draw them. I didn't say that to Leslie, of course. I just said the deck was very good, and I was very concerned. And talking it through with Leslie, she really was like, "I think you should just play Lexi then, because like the worst thing that can happen is you feel that way, and then you still play Oldhim, and then you just lose to a bunch of Lexis at the Pro Tour. Like that's probably the worst timeline that possibly could happen, because it's like you're kicking yourself because like you knew this was going to happen, you didn't really prepare for it, and you still kind of chose that path." So after I had that conversation, I loaded up some of the Wolfpack Lexi decks and I just started jamming Talishar. I had like an hour and 15 minutes of free time that day. I lost like 2 games. I lost to an Azuri and I lost to like a Katsu. I was like, well, it's okay. We're going to get better at this, I guess. I never really got much better at it, but I still really wanted to like make it work. And I was just like losing games like left and right. And I could feel like any edge that I got from being an experienced Flesh and Blood player just like leaving my fingertips. Like there'd be hands would be like, oh, if I just draw 3 of a kind, I'm gonna win. And I don't draw 3 of a kind. I'm like, right, you have to draw it to play it. And I'm like, I can't. I guess I'm gonna die. And I found it like I thought that Lexi was just like so good, but then once I started playing Lexi, I obviously realized she requires a lot of technical like, you have a lot of decisions you're making in a lot of games. Like I think I was just starting to feel like I could not really do that well, but I was like, I have confidence. I'm gonna keep playing games. I'm gonna make it to the Pro Tour on Thursday, and I'll have like an entire Thursday to test. And I don't know. I didn't put in the games, and I didn't feel the confidence, even though numerically I felt like Lexi was the deck to play. And so like that day when I was playing with Bodee, it really helped me. Just like I was like, I feel like the amount of comfort I felt transitioning back from Lexi to Oldhim was like exponential. Like I was like, I feel like I could like play with one eye, like one hand, like you could give me all these handicaps and I'd feel more comfortable playing Oldhim than playing Lexi. So
gotcha. Well, and I guess what was also interesting is that the team had like an Anathos based Oldhim deck that I think most of the Oldhim players on the team took.
Yeah.
But you rebelled against the Anathos dream and decided to stick with Mopey Old Whale and Shields. Do you want to talk about that decision though?
Yeah, Whale and Sledge. I think okay, so
we don't have Whale, Titan's Fist.
Yeah,
sure,
sorry,
yes,
Titan's Fist Sledge.
I wish we
wish we had Whale. Yeah. Titan's Fist, the bad one.
Our team, we have, so for those that know, I don't know if you've ever mentioned this in other podcast episodes, but we have like me and Jonathan Magnuson, J-Mag, are like kind of like the two, before we got like all of the other Midwest Oldhims, I'm kind of clumping them together. Ben, Ryan, Rich, whole crew. It was just like me, mainly I felt like it was me and J-Mag talking Oldhim, but he and I are like literally like opposite ends of the spectrum. If there's like a consistency Oldhim, but like very boring, and then like Channel Mount Heroic, Snapdragon Scalers, Bonkum Oldhim.
Earthor Bounty.
Yeah, Earthor Bounty, like, Toma Harvest, Hiva Pulverize, and then go the Earthor Surge, like Pulverize, like we were like super different with the way we think about Oldhim as a hero. But we were starting to coalesce. Like the Anathos build was starting to look more and more like some of the consistent, a lot of 3-block, less fluff, like very consistent, like trying to hit that magic 13 or 14 damage delta per hand. And I was getting seduced. Like I was like, this deck looks so good. But he didn't want to play Stalagmite. And that was just, it was like, I couldn't not play Stalagmite. I think ultimately the deck that I took the Pro Tour with, one of the things I've been saying to people is I feel like I designed it so that it had about a 48% win rate into everybody. but like it
It
didn't
doesn't
feel
sound like a
favored
good
into
deck.
many heroes. But that's like how I felt comfortable with it. Like I knew that like every single game was gonna be a grind. I didn't feel like I particularly was teched for any single certain hero, but I felt like I had one red chokeslam against a deck that a red chokeslam's really good. If we draw it, we're holding on to it of our dear life. I was like that. This is the type of deck that I feel comfortable playing, and I was going to play it. And I also wanted to play Channel Lake Frigid. Very often, if I ever won a game against Lexi, I had a few things that I kind of really wanted to do, and one of them was play a Channel Lake Frigid, and literally that Channel Lake Frigid just like somehow turned into like a wounded bull of value, like a 2-card 8 or 9, basically. If my Lexi opponent is forced to like literally pitch like 3 cards to shoot 1 arrow, it's like so good. And I just like I couldn't play Channel Lake Frigid with Anathos, so I had to make decisions, and I ended up just choosing to play Sledge and Titan's Fist, and I had the shield. And I think that like it's not that you can't play the shields with Anathos, it's just like J-Mag's build didn't have it, and I knew that some of the guys were, kind of on it, and I just felt like actually Dave, who ended up topping the calling, just took J-Mag's build and just like, here, let me just put a Stalagmite and a Titan's Fist in it, and it was great. So like maybe I could have done that as well, but I don't know. I had some decisions I wanted, and I just was like, this is just the world I'm going to live in. I didn't feel like it was that good in the mirror, for example.
Yeah, I was about to say the Anathos Fanbrace tech was specifically there to like, and we put in a lot of work and felt most confident like 2 weeks before, like when we thought Oldhim was just going to be like the best deck, most played deck, and then it was just that mad rush that every single player had in like the week before the Pro Tour, like, oh no, Lexi's the best deck. I don't like, what do I do? And I started pivoting to like a different hero a day for a while. And then I kind of just fell back on Oldhim as the comfort pick that I had been testing the most throughout previously. So I ended up in a similar spot. I just was on the Anathos deck that I've been playing the bunch as opposed to like the more traditional builds.
Yeah. I think the way that I designed my deck ended up helping me so much because like I played against Rhinar, Dash, Katsu, Dorinthia. I also played against 3 Lexis, but like I played against all these heroes where like Ice React, Stalagmite, like all the classic Oldhim things was like actually quite good against. And I like came to this conclusion of this type of Oldhim build by playing in the Battle Hardened circuit, because last year I played in a bunch of Battle Hardens. I never lost in Mirror. I never lost basically against an Icelander or like any of the meta deck. I never lost against like a 5. I did lose against 1-5 once, and Dan ended up winning that 10K. But like I lost a 5 twice. What am I saying? I lost very rarely to like the meta decks, but I crushingly, humiliatingly, humbly lost to Azalea with Oldhim. I figured out how to do it. I lost to Dorinthia. I lost to Akatsu. Like I lost against all these heroes that like I didn't really test against. I didn't really tech against, and I just like didn't feel like I had a good plan against. And I felt like the way I designed my deck was like it is just a little bit more generically kind of like just trying to do very generic things. Like it's not trying to like I don't know, like really like crush my opponent and really disrupt my opponent. It has a lot more just vanilla, like trying to play efficient Flesh and Blood. And I felt like, I think that's like one of the ways you beat like Dorinthia, Katsu, all these like random decks, because like your disruption is kind of wacky. Like if you Spinal Crush at Dorinthia, they could literally take it all and just go like Dawnblade and just like heap like 9 plus 9 or 12 attack reactions of power on it. So I don't know, like that's why I ended up deciding to build the deck I wanted to build, and I don't know if I would do it if I had the choice of playing in the Pro Tour again, if I had a lot more time to test Lexi. But obviously it did work out for me.
That's fair. Are we all just on the same page that Lexi's still just the best deck though? What do you think about Hamilton?
Oh, I think Lexi's definitely the deck to beat. I think both like it's, even though I didn't win the Pro Tour, even though I didn't even make the finals of the Pro Tour, there were 4 in the top 8, there were 7 in the top 16. I think there were 16 in the top 32, which is kind of kind of crazy. And then
it had a 57% win rate in the Pro Tour. Like, I mean, like on paper, the deck was like ridiculous in its performance. And I think like just because it just underperformed in top 8, people are just like, oh yeah, the format's fine. Like 3 matches didn't go in Lexi's favor. Clearly that's like perfectly
It was
reasonable.
roughly 50% of every single top cut. So top 8 was 4, top 16 there was 7, top 32 there was 16, and top 64 there was 28.
Yeah.
So it fell a little short of that top 64, but it's of half the top 64. Yeah. But for being like, it was context, like 27% of the field or something. How much was like, I don't remember how much it was. It was less than 30%.
A quarter of the field.
Sure. Yeah.
And then over 50% of all the top cuts. So, I mean, like in that sense, it overperformed, but like I just said, and like it like, I think Andrew got incredibly unlucky, and Mara played incredibly well in that matchup. And I think Bodee, we just did that on Manor University. That'll be out this week, covering that game. Bodee kind of made some weird decisions in some spots and kind of let Mara get some extra equity, especially out of like the skull cap, because he basically he just blocked in a weird way that allowed Mara to stay lower than him. So she got an extra block out of skull cap, where if he just didn't make a block, she just doesn't get that skull cap value. And I think with like one of the weird things about Flesh and Blood, or just card games in general, is just how much like everybody just focuses in on like the finals or like who wins a tournament. And I think sometimes just like the overall performance of it kind of gets lost in the shuffle.
Yeah. I do think that like maybe the public zeitgeist is like focusing a little bit more on the finals, but I bet that like all the other teams and a lot of the players who are, you know, gunning for Antwerp, Singapore, Birmingham, they're very aware of how good Lexi is. I was super surprised leading up to the Pro Tour that Lexi wasn't being talked about as much as I thought she was supposed to be talked about, kind of like publicly from a lot of the people.
It was like a weird secret that everyone knew. I feel like what was going on. Like, I'm not playing Lexi. Lexi's unplayable, but secretly everybody knew Lexi was broken, but they just didn't want to say it in case somebody didn't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I thought that it made sense too, thinking back, because like maybe a lot of teams kind of had been brewing this really good Lexi build, and they didn't want to really like tell people. But then there was like Matt McInnes, who like, you know, juiced both Charles and I think Pat in the Swiss of Battle-Hardened Richmond, went like undefeated in the Swiss, and was just like telling people left and right, Lexi is broken, Lexi is so good. And I was like, yeah, this is what I was expecting to see on Twitter and like online. But I wasn't seeing it. And obviously, since our own team had some guys who were playing Lexi and believed in Lexi, and I truly believed in it too. I didn't want to also just like, Lexi is so broken, guys, it's unfair. But, you know, it was just curious. I was like, where is the, like, when Oldhim was like doing super well, I felt like everyone was like, you know, trashing us. But Lexi was like, no one said anything. But, you know,
yeah,
bygones are bygones. I think that like the funniest poll, and I saw that you commented on it, was like Flake did a tweet just like today, I think. It was like, who do you think is like the most unfair, most broken, most overtuned hero? And of course, everyone votes for Oldhim.
Yeah, and like, for context, it was like right now in Classic Constructed.
Yeah, right this moment, without any of the cards that got banned. So
yeah. People really, I think it's just because like there's the precedence of Oldhim doing so well, so people are just like, oh, of course Oldhim won a Pro Tour, obviously, but they're not taking into account that the fact like you're literally an Oldhim master, and I think that's pretty well demonstrated at this point, and especially well demonstrated was in your Dromai quarterfinals, semifinals. And that match was insane. I thought about, or Michael and I talked about doing it on University, and we were like, you might have to, like, 3-hour game might be a bit much. But I remember seeing you were coming out of the bathroom, and I just was like, you looked exhausted. I was like, give me a hug, buddy. And then you were just like, dude.
I didn't even realize how much time had passed, actually, because I had spoken to Zach and Dave right before, and they were both in. David was on a win-in, and Zach was like, I'm pretty sure I'm locked for the top 8, the calling. This is before my semis, by the way. And then afterwards, I'm like, I would go to them, I'm like, did you guys make the top 8? And Zach's like, dude, I already lost in the semis. I was like, oh, shoot.
Yeah. It's like you were a theory of relativity or whatever when you're just going
I was like in a
different...
hyperbolic chamber. I was like Captain America. I took a nap and just oh my gosh, that was some game.
There were some points in that game where I was just like, oh, he's totally gonna win, and there were other points in the game where I was like, oh, there's no way he's ever gonna win this game again. And I was just like, it was just a wild.
I went through those cycles too. I know exactly those points probably. And the best part is it kept flip flopping. Like it wasn't just always one narrative.
Absolutely. So Michael Hamilton, you played Lexi in the Pro Tour, so what do you think about, does like the deck need to adapt at all? Do you think it's been solved, or do you think it could be like tuned more for like the Road to Nationals or Antwerp or anything like that? Like, or is it just like, this is what we have now?
So I was really happy with our build that we took. I think I would do some more tests with different builds of it, because we were on we played Art of War over Premeditate, and like there are a lot of like changes you have to make to the list because you're doing that, and then you have to cut Art of War when you're boarding in all of your ice cards. So we played Art of War plus the ice package, which in some spots led to some awkward situations where like against Dromai, you can't play poppers, Art of War, and ice cards. You have to like decide what you want to do because you can't play all that stuff and still have a functional deck. I'm kind of interested in testing with different versions of Lexi with like more codexes, or going to Premeditate over Art of War, and some other stuff that we just really didn't try. Like, I don't think anyone played a game with Hamstring Shot in their deck leading up into the Pro Tour. And I think there is a lot of other stuff going on in Lexi, and I don't think it's solved. And especially like knowing however people go to attack Lexi, you need to adjust your deck to fight that kind of stuff, and seeing how people go to attack it will inform a lot of the decisions in terms of how you build the deck to fight that stuff. So I think Lexi is the best deck, and I think it's probably will be until either bans happen or Dusk Till Dawn, and I don't think there's going to be bans until after Dusk Till Dawn. I think that depending on how other decks attack it, there will definitely be times where these decks have positive matchups into builds of Lexi, and if the Lexis aren't ready or adjusted, they'll have a rough matchup there. And I think that's it. But
that's fair.
Lexi's very strong. Oh, last thing about that. I also switched to Lexi like 4 or 5 days before the Pro Tour. So I did basically zero testing in terms of figuring out the deck. And I was just like trying to get up to speed on playing the deck. I'm like, I'm taking Brody's list. I'm just going to try to learn it as well as I can, because I have 5 days and some of that's travel time.
Do you think Oldhim solved Michael Feng? Are you just going to run back to your exact same 80 in Antwerp?
I think that like, I'm going to first give you some context as to one of the reasons why I think Lexi is powerful, and why Oldhim is powerful. Is it okay if I go on a tangent? It's like a 3-minute tangent, at least. Okay.
I asked you the question. You can answer it however you like.
So I'm going to answer the question.
Well, it's our show. He's the guest, though.
And the answer is no. I don't think it's solved. I don't think he's solved. I don't think the wiggle room is that big, but I don't think he's solved. And I think there's a lot of like 8 cards at least that you can customize. Even for like my list, you can probably, there's like 14 cards that I think like you could change, and you could have like better matchups to certain heroes. But my tangent is, there was this thing called the what was it called? The Fab Team Cup. A few months ago, Michael was in it. You were representing, like you were with like your Indianapolis guys, I think. I was with the Runaways. We were just kind of like all free agents. The Wolfpack didn't participate formally as a team. And I played Oldhim every single time. And the cool thing is, like, due to scheduling, I often was like one of the last rounds to play. And everyone on your team for that week, you have a 5-person roster. Everyone has to pick a hero, but it's unique heroes. So like, you know, it's gonna be 5 different heroes. And you can like kind of tell like what hero someone's gonna play by like their past history of what they used to play for the other weeks, and also like by kind of like just scheduling. Like if you're the last couple of rounds, like you kind of know like, oh, Dash has already been taken, Icender's already been taken, Oldhim's already going to take it. This guy's probably going to play Briar. Like there was like that kind of minigame, and I beat Dash like 3 times in 3 different weeks, because by the time it was me, I was like, most likely I'm playing against Dash, and I just like built these wacky decks. I built a deck that didn't even have Rampart. I had Stalagmite. I played Crown of Providence. I played Mage Master Boots with Tome of Findel, and I just played like this like very heavy mid-range like value every single turn. type of deck into Dash. I played against an Icelander. I built a deck that had 15 ice cards, 15 earth cards, 3 Oakenolds, Artivore, and I literally Oakenold fused like 4 times that game, and I beat the Icelander. And it was like a Bullander as well. What I'm saying is, if Oldhim and or Lexi know exactly what they're going to play against, you can build a deck that I think changes your win rate to like 60 to 70%. And the reason why this is possible, and there's this cool chart if you go to February.net. Why did I say .net? Anyways, if you go to stats, there's 3 different tables. One is called the most played table, which is just what do people play. One is called the meta result. It's the most played decks. One is called meta results, which has like kind of, it's that place where you can filter by May and see that Lexi's been winning like 57 or 58% of the time. And then the last tab is called card distribution. And if you click view cards by hero, you'll see that like Oldhim has 226 like cards available to him. I'm not sure if that includes Pulse or doesn't, but like that shouldn't matter too much. And for the longest time, Oldhim's number was the biggest number. No other hero had as many cards available to them as Oldhim. Technically, Briar and Lexi should have been the same, but since Ball Lightning was banned, they were like down a few cards. They were like off by like a little bit. But right now, Lexi has 280 available. To put things in perspective, where's Dash? Dash has 94 cards.
Datadol has 92.
Yeah, Datadol is even less, yeah. But Dash has 94, and Dash is able to win callings, which, you know, tells you the power of kind of like the whole pistol package and yeah, yada yada. But like Lexi has almost triple the card pool as Dash, and the type of builds, the variations, the available tools, like to say that Lexi is solved would be insane, because like even if you have the perfect Lexi deck for certain matchups, like you have like almost like this huge Swiss Army knife in terms of flexibility of building your Lexi deck that I imagine very few teams will have the same Lexi builds, even if they're like really certain that their like Lexi decks are really good, just because there's so much variability. And I think that's like one of the powers and strengths of Lexi, not only numerically, like really having a lot of power of Rain Razor, 3 of a kind. Premeditate's obviously statistically really good. Codex of Frailty, just like nuts. But you have like all this variety of like cards that you can also play. And I think that for the longest time, Oldhim was in that spot. And I thought that was really good. But now I think that spot is cleanly taken over by Lexi. And that's just from like cards, win rate percentage. Like if you actually start playing the games, you will feel that way too. But with so much options comes like sometimes this like, you know, having too many options almost like incapacitates you. Like it's like analysis paralysis. And now back to the question you asked: Do I think Oldhim is solved? I don't think Oldhim is solved. I think that there are a lot of angles you can take Oldhim. You can try to improve the Lexi matchup. People have been throwing around Buckle and Buckling Blow. That is definitely something that's very devastating for a Lexi if she loses her New Horizon. Anathos and Vambrace is kind of this like newer tech that was also very well kept secret. It felt like when I was at the Pro Tour and at the calling, so many Oldhims were on Anathos Vambrace, especially like people that had any semblance of a relationship with any of the major teams. And I feel like there's like still some room to grow, but like the Oldhim card pool is just not as didn't get as much love, I guess, from outsiders, and so we're not going to see much evolution. So,
okay. And fun fact: the Emperor has more playable cards than Dash. The Emperor has 104.
I think everyone just has more cards than Dash.
It's crazy.
Even the Assassins have more cards. I think even before outsiders, they had more cards available than Dash. To put things in perspective.
Yeah, but Dash still has more action points than I think than the Assassins could ever hope to dream to have. So there you go. Yeah. And I think the one thing that I might push back on that answer, though, is that like, yeah, there are a lot of different ways to build Lexi, but I feel like when you're trying to do something that's like hyper proactive, it's a lot different than trying to build something that's reactive, right? So like when you're trying to answer specific threats, it makes sense why you need different, configurations, like whether you want like 9 staunch responses or you just want to play really aggressive Oldhims or the mid-rangey or hard fatigue. Like different configurations of those answers to the meta are a lot more varied. But as far as like if you're just trying to do something like proactive and like kill your opponent by just doing as much damage as possible and just being super efficient, I feel like that range is a lot more narrow. So sure, like maybe some people will try to go back to like classic fuse ice Lexi, but I don't know if that deck is like could ever even be like normal like light ice fuseless Lexi that people have been playing right now. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting in terms of Lexi because, like, well, Lexi is an aggressive deck and is trying to do as much damage as possible. Once you get to like the last like 15 to 20 slots of your deck, after you get like the most efficient arrows, all the Bolton shots, all the red on hits that deal more damage, like Infecting Shot and Remorseless and Heat Seeker and Endless Arrow and Searing Shot and even Drill Shot that's in basically every Lexi deck. Once you get to the last like 10 to 20 card slots, you're basically kind of forced to pick some kind of disruption effect because you need more arrows because you need your arrow count to be high. Huh?
Because you have the damage already. Like your arrows are already like your threatening damage effects.
Yeah, and there's just no more arrows that give you more damage. They're just like the same rate, but they have some disruptive effect on them. So you have to decide which ones are like the best for the specific metagame.
I think even Remorseless actually was an arrow that not all of the Pro Tour people that shared their deck list played, to put things in perspective. But yeah, like Fatigue Shot, Hamstring Shot, these are like, this is disruption. You're playing a proactive game plan, but I mean, that's kind of the Ranger class in general. Like she doesn't have armor. She doesn't really want to block. She just wants her arrows to make you not be able to do things, or ideally, hamper your turn so that she can go back to shooting you with more arrows. But it does make sense though. Like, right. Like I think that even if the Lexi deck isn't solved, the Lexi game plan is pretty straightforward. It's not going to change that much. Like the only real changes are like maybe if you play a few more non-attack actions, like some of the codexes or the laces or premeditate, so that you can set up these 6-card hands a little bit more comfortably, not have to pitch stack a little bit as much. But the game plan of load an arrow of go again, shoot it, load an arrow of go again, shoot it, shoot an arrow from Arsenal, maybe have a ponder token from some for free because your cards are great and keep doing it again like that.
And why not?
Really? I mean, that's like that game plan's probably not changing. And I think that the Oldhim overall game plan isn't changing too much. Like there's going to be more mid-rangey, more fatiguey, but most of it is like kind of value driven, bias towards defensive, because you don't really have that many good offensive options and just kind of like grind people out. Like I think that overall archetype isn't going to change too much, but I do think I am going to be so excited to see Oldhims that have figured out how to beat Lexi kind of consistently or have a cool tech or whatever it is.
You think that deck exists?
It could be a unicorn. It could be like, just a leprechaun that we're never going to find. But, I think that the only good thing about Oldhim is that at this point, he is the second deepest card pool, and you do have cool things that you can play. I think that, maybe playing Mangle with Buckling Blow is going overboard, but I think that that's something that I would not be surprised some people come to terms with, like, or come to Antwerp at least with like some type of tech like that. The only downside of having these diverse card pools is you're forced to make decisions, because like when you play Dash, you don't really have to make decisions. The deck is just, it's like, I remember when I was building Dash, I just typed in boost on February.net and I just started clicking. And then the deck was almost done. So like, more choices gives you more opportunities and to make decisions, and more decisions gives you more opportunities to make the correct decisions ideally. And then you can feel rewarded when those decisions are great, and a learning opportunity when they're not. So
that's fair. Oh man. Sorry, I was looking at the card pool wheel.
Yeah, it's a cool chart.
I'm so blown away by this.
Look at that. Just for
I didn't know it was here.
Yeah, I love looking at all the February stats. It's like one of my favorite things to do. I think I mentioned this actually, this dynamic in the Wolfpack Discord, but
I've heard you talk about it, and I know I've heard the Dash has the lowest card pool spiel.
Yeah.
But it was cool, like actually pulling it up now. So I guess Oldhim, super close to living legend now. Do you think he'll living legend after you win Antwerp and the Road to Nats season?
I think that he will living legend because based off of the numbers, it seems like Oldhim is like basically the second most played, even though second most played usually like almost like half of the Lexi representation. But given that I expected there to be about 300 RTNs and each RTN will, there's going to be about 300 RTNs, and I think my hope is about half of them will be CC and the other half will be draft. And I think if Oldhim, I mean, he's at the point, right? He's at 888, so he needs 56, right? More RTNs. I would be surprised if he doesn't win any of the callings and still living legends just based off the RTN season. But there's the RTN season, and then we have
there's some battle hardens too, right?
Yeah. Shoot, there is no more ProQuest season this year because there's no Pro Tour. Until next year.
In the future, Michael and I will talk about how interesting it'll be next year with the second Pro Quest season coming around and that Heroes of Living Legend faster next year.
Yeah, actually, I don't actually expect him to Living Legend if he doesn't win any of the callings. Because the Battle Harden's only 10 points, and I really only think that he's going to win about like 20 RTNs at max. So that's like
56 out of 150 seems like a big ask.
Yeah. I do think, like, for example, like Briar is just like, is she ever gonna, like, you know, like, is this gonna be the season? Because like, there's not that many people playing Briar, and I think that would be the saddest way to Living Legend for whatever it's worth. Just like coasting from like 996 just some
random person in Poland wins their Road to Nats with not to knock on Poland, it was just the first country that came into mind, but like still.
But yeah, now that I think about it, since there isn't a Pro Quest season, I don't expect Oldhim to Living Legend. Obviously, if I win a calling with it, I will be ecstatic because that means I won a calling, and I won't even care that Oldhim Living Legend. At a certain point, I've already come to terms after I won the Pro Tour that, first of all, that is probably very unlikely ever going to happen again, and second of all, like Oldhim is so close now, like he did not feel close at all, obviously, when he was at 680. But now it's just like, in my head, it's like, I'm already 1 foot out the door. Like, you got to emotionally prepare yourself. You can't just let this.
Are you getting your Eeyore altars done on Bravo next, or?
I don't know. I have played some. I actually, at a certain point, for Richmond at least, for Battle Hardened Richmond, because I wanted to, because at that point we already had the Van Brace in the deck, and I was like, me, Dave, we're trying to decide if we want to bring Van Brace, and then out of respect for John, we didn't bring Van Brace. I was thinking about playing Oldhim or Bravo for that, because I also didn't want to play like what I was probably going to play for the Pro Tour, but in hindsight, it was so silly because like
who cares? It's Oldhim.
My deck wasn't very good anyway. Like it was like whatever. But I did test a bunch of Bravo at that time, and I think that Bravo is actually quite good in this current meta. Actually, like no psyops, just like he's a solid hero. You have the same old issues with Bravo, which is like consistency. You don't have kind of seats, kind of smooth some of that consistency. You're not usually playing Tunic, and so you don't have like that kind of like that little like the little Tunic plays that are like really powerful in Oldhim. But you do have like Crippling Crush, which is very good. I think honestly, if we like, I think I said this in the Wolfpack chat, but like if you could just play Bravo and have Stalagmite, like no Crown of Seeds, like Crown of Seeds is too good, broken, whatever. But if we could have Stalagmites, you could get me in there. I could see myself being a Bravo gamer. There's some matchups I just really want a Stalagmite, and like I feel like it's become a crutch for me over the last few months playing Oldhim so much. Like I've seen some Oldhim lists that don't have Stalagmite, and I'm like, I can't live like that. I want to be able to beat Katsu, and I want to be able to beat Rhinar and Phi, and like have like a nice little Stalagmite to block.
I'd be fine the Pro Tour with Anathos, Oldhim, and no Stalagmite. It's doable.
I know, but it's just those matchups where you just really want that frostbite, and it's so cool because like a skill testing card, or sometimes like you block with it and it became a steel braid buckler, and sometimes you block with it and it becomes a husk.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah. It was actually a piece of advice that you gave to me, like when I was testing like Bravo and Icelander, that kind of translated over, where it's just like, just pretend their cards don't exist. Like there's no frostbites, there's no disruption. They're actually not going to do anything on their turn. Just attack them and just hope for the best. And I've beaten like a dash that way. I've beaten, that's how I beat Fi. I was just like, yeah, here's my Anathos Terra Sunder and hope it's good enough to disrupt him. And I got it. So.
You got to make some of those risks when you're playing Bravo to turn the corner because.
Well, I was on Oldhim, but yeah, same.
Oh, okay, sure.
Same.
You're on Anathos, yeah. You just have to make some of those risks because I don't know. Every other deck is so good at dealing damage, and Oldhim's just kind of like we're struggling here.
I'm a scrappy old man over here.
Yeah.
So you actually won your first calling on Oldhim, Michael Hamilton. Do you like miss him at all? Like, do you?
Maybe not what he's become.
So I really loved playing mid-range Oldhim that relied heavily on attacking with Winter's Well, threatening the Frostbite, where you'd spend most turn cycles, you would spend 3 cards defensively and pitch an ice card attack with Winter's Well. Defensively being like playing defense reactions, just blocking for 3 or ice reacting, something like that. And then attack with Winter's Well, just put these aggro decks in like the constant question of like, are you going to block this whale? Are you going to get the Frostbite? Are you going to just play a turn through an extra Frostbite? And that was like, I really enjoyed that even before we had Stalagmite. Like at Orlando when I won the calling with Oldhim, I just had Rampart and it was fine. I think Stalagmite is obviously very, very powerful. And I think that it was a huge improvement to Oldhim to get access to that shield. But even before then, I still just loved 3 cards defense, attack with Winter's Whale, threatening a Frostbite. And that was like the baseline turn for Oldhim, how I like to play him into a lot of the aggro decks like Briar and Fi and decks like that. And once they banned Whale, I was like, you can't play Oldhim that way anymore. Blocking with 3 cards and attacking with your hammer. They're just going to take it. They're going to outrace you. They're going to be more efficient than that. Then you can be using 3 cards on defense, 1 card on offense. And that kind of plan doesn't really take advantage of Oldhim's threat of fatigue very well because again, like you have a better weapon, you're better at fatiguing. But I think like, I guess I kind of mourned losing Oldhim when they banned Whale because I basically was like, Oldhim's never going to be the deck that I enjoyed playing, that I loved, because Whale was such a big part of that. So I guess hopefully that answers your question.
Sure. Yeah.
I think it's actually kind of funny because Michael, you played a lot of Icelander when Fi was like top tier, and when I was playing Oldhim at that time, Whale had already like into Fi, especially if they presented Tunic, like it was already like not doing the trick. Like you couldn't block 3 cards and just Icy Whale a Fi, because sometimes they could play like they could just do a starter, pitching a blue weapon, another starter that both cost 0, and then like grab a Phoenix Flame and just Lava Burst. Like they could just play through the Frostbite and out damage you. Like this was especially already happening. Minimalism. Yeah, especially like with little minimalism, they just like laugh at your Frostbite and your potential Ice React. It was just like so bad. Like decks, like I remember when I was playing into Fies, I was already like, if my best play is Icy Hammer, I am probably losing. Like that dynamic had already kind of like shifted before Winter's Whale was banned. Winter's Whale was really good into Briar and Lexi, of course, but into like Fi, the premier aggro deck at the time, it just like wasn't cutting it, because like the Fi decks were already like expecting the Frostbite from Icelander to an extent, and like being able to play around a Frostbite was just like a core of what made Fi just like such a good aggro deck, and one of the reasons why I felt like so many people were playing Fi. And so when Whale was banned, I was sad, but kind of deep down I was like, so many of my matchups don't change that much. It's just the fact that I can't put these ice cards in my deck, because like Oakenold was already like so hard to like fuse and like kind of like 1 foot out the door. And then when we lost all the ice cards, we lost the ability to channel like Frigid in the second cycle. It made like dash actually so much harder. And like I think that Dash was actually one of the biggest winners of that ban because hypothermia was gone. Dash couldn't get aggroed by Belittle, and Winter's Whale wasn't a threat for Dash, but the ice cards on the second cycle, keeping Channel Leakage around, the threat of playing against even like an Oldhim could play Hypothermia by a turn, and also Blizzard wasn't being seen as much in deck. So like, because like back in the day when you're playing Dash, you got all the pistols, you have to like play around Ice React and Blizzard. Now you can just like play around Ice React, and like I'm not surprised that Dash has won 2 callings, and I think that's one of the things that like doesn't get said as much. And I think, as an Oldhim player, it's like one of the most depressing things to think about. It's just like it was such a subtle like so many like narrow things happened to make Dash so much better into that matchup, and no one talks about it. And it's fine. We're just gonna lose. We're just gonna get shot down to death by the bazookas.
It's weird because like on the surface, like Whale wasn't actually that important into Dash because most of the time if you were swinging with Whale, you were probably losing. But like all the ice cards that supported Whale were all actually very good against Dash, like Frigid, Blizzard, Ice React, Hypothermia. That makes a lot of sense. And
actually, I think on the flip side, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you were right. You kind of talked about how I had switched to Icelander at that point, so I didn't really appreciate all that the Whale ban actually meant for Oldhim. It was not what I expected, I guess. But go ahead.
Yeah. No, I just thought it was a funny perspective, and I think I remember I listened to your podcast after the Whale ban, and you guys were like, "Oldhim's unplayable," basically.
We said D tier. We didn't put him in F tier. We said D tier.
I was like, "Well, this is just a hero I've been playing at every single ELO event of the year so far."
Yeah.
So,
we have some hot takes sometimes,
Actually, one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting is because I had locals that were playing Dromai at the time, and I was actually losing to them with Whale. I lose to my locals all the time, so it's not that impressive, I guess. But I actually told them that day because Winter's Whale was banned while I was at an Armory with Winter's Whale, so it was a little sad. But we were playing. We had just played actually, and I had just lost actually. Funnily enough, and I told him that like I think Oldhim's going to have more poppers now moving forward, because what are we going to replace these ice block 2s with? We're probably just going to put these we're just going to take some of the Bravo 6 costs or 4 cost 6s, and I can imagine Oldhim's popper count, which at that time was resting at a 24, 25 is what you expected from Oldhim's. I could see it being 33. I could easily see it cross 34. And that ended up happening. And I think ironically, that ban made Dromai worse. And I think we're still seeing the repercussions of that, because at that time, Bravo was the only hero that really could reliably just pop. So interesting food for thought.
Yeah, and now it's not uncommon for Oldhim to have more poppers in his deck than Bravo, because he has access to cards like Mulch and Blue Glacial, where Bravo doesn't have access to those. Okay.
All right. So you kind of talked about it there, and I've got this last question for you before I think we're about time to wrap things up. But you kind of talked about going to your Armory, losing a lot at your Armory, spending a lot of time there. And I know before the show you talked about wanting to kind of encourage people to go to their Armories. I just wanted to give you a chance to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, my little bully pulpit. I
convince Michael Hamilton to go to his local Armory. Do it.
I don't want to make people do anything that they don't feel comfortable doing, but I just want to make the case for why I think Armory attendance is really nice. And I think maybe I'm not covering all the bases, but I think that for starters, we're literally doing a podcast talking about Flesh and Blood, and I think we all are passionate about this game to some extent. And I think I know that going to Armories for most people is not convenient, or there's sacrifices that have to be made. It's most likely not good value. Even if you're Michael Hamilton, you win the thing, the gas, the time, the entry fees, getting a little cold. It's not good value, but I want to make the case that it's a good use of your time if you truly believe in the game and you want it to succeed. And I think I have multiple reasons. One of the reasons is one of the coolest ways to grow Flesh and Blood is literally other people seeing you play Flesh and Blood in person, at the store,
in the Flesh and Blood,
to buy Pokemon. Yeah, exactly. Someone's buying Pokemon, someone's buying Magic, and they're just hey, what did they do? What game are they playing? And that conversation might not turn them into a Flesh and Blood player. In fact, the next 5 times they watch you play, might not turn them into a Flesh and Blood player, but it's like this constant, like it's present, it's in their mind space, and like them making that leap usually comes after like repeated interactions, but those interactions kind of have to happen. And then another reason is I think that there's a certain type of mass like that you have to get for armies to really thrive, and it really requires there to be like 4 to 5 people who are just willing to keep going, even if it's like either it's not firing, it's not a really good experience. As long as the TO is like reasonable, as long as the store is reasonable, as long as like there's like not other like factors that like you don't want to support the store for whatever reason. Like if you don't hit that critical mass, it's just never going to happen. And the only way to really get there is like someone's got to do it. And if that person can be you through, because you have the resources, you have the time, you have the needs, the means, I highly encourage it to be you, because like not that many people have that ability. And so attending, yeah, go ahead.
I fully agree. Whenever I attend my Armory, I think I'll say, like, I think I've said this on the podcast before too, I view it like community service.
Yeah.
Not, it's maybe it sounds a little harsh, but like,
no, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Like, because playing games against people with like a great skill disparity in Flesh and Blood, since it's such a high skill cap game, it's not the most enjoyable thing to do in the world, but it needs to happen. Because like you're saying, if there's not people playing at your local game store, if your local game store is not carrying Flesh and Blood, then the game's just going to ultimately be unsuccessful in the long run. And it needs to have that grassroots support. And in Magic the Gathering's heyday, I'm sure you can attest to this, like Friday Night Magics would get like 30 to 40 people.
It felt like a religion.
Honestly. It was crazy back in the day for like the peak of Magic the Gathering. And like and I think that's kind of one of the saddest things about Magic in today's day and age, is that Arena has just forced so many people out of like their LGSs. And like now most game stores, Friday Night Magics will get like the same amount as like Flesh and Blood Armories, where it's like 10, 15 people, because like, why should I go to my local game store when I can just play Magic the Gathering Arena online in whatever, it's the same thing. And that's the big advantage of Flesh and Blood not having an online client and being so focused on the Flesh and Blood. And I think neglecting that and not building the community up in like the Flesh and Blood is kind of shirking a responsibility that you have to the game in some regards. I don't go as often as I would like. You know, I have a kid. I've been traveling a bunch. But I still try to make a point to, like, if I have the free time in a given week, then I should go play in an Armory. And you get to play weird decks. Like I played like Control Phi in a week. Just build something cool and have a grand old time.
I think like if that's like the one takeaway that like whoever's listening to this, like you as a viewer, take away from this, is that like us guys just trying to encourage you to go to an Armory, and like that changes like one person's decision from like I don't really want to go to Armory today to actually going. That would be like a personal success for me. Like I would feel so good about that. And like if somehow this did change your mind, I would love to hear about that and just like how your Armory went. Because I think that like even like selfishly, if you want to get better at the game, I think even if it doesn't seem like you're getting better, like if you're playing either people who are like the disparity is too big, like they're much better than you or you're much better than them, I think there's still some things to be learned. And I also think that if you're like more of like a collector and you kind of are speculating on Flesh and Blood, and you're kind of like more like a lurking person who's not really into it, by playing Flesh and Blood, even if you're like just losing and just kind of just hanging out with people, you're making your investment better. Like just that ever so slightly more. Like it's an investment of time for both like collectors and players. And I think like I represent so many people. I work with so many retailers that they'd be stoked to hear that people want to go to Armories, because like that's like the biggest sad is like I know a lot of store owners who want to promote Flesh and Blood, they just can't get the players to go, and it's like that's like one of the saddest things to hear about, right? Like there are people who want this game to succeed, but it requires like a kind of a joint community effort. Obviously, there's so many reasons why people can't go, and a lot of it is financial, a lot of it is time. And I don't want anyone to feel bad for not going, but if you have the means, you are kind of like some of the few who are blessed with this
the elite
with this opportunity. So try not to just give it up. It is a privilege to be able to have the time, the resources, the means to go to Armories, and I just encourage people to like try to make one more Armory this month, and I don't know, make some friends.
Yeah. couldn't have said it any better myself. So I think I'm going to wrap it up on that note. Thank you very much for coming on the cast, Michael Feng. Thank you very much for coming on the cast, Michael Hamilton. And the next time you're playing Flesh of Blood at your local Armory, always remember, mind your man.